Good morning everybody. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at how I painted up this Castellan Crowe for the Grey Knights. So to begin we're going to start with the cape, and just like the box art this is going to be a red cape. I will be using the airbrush for this, but you can also do this with your paintbrush. So the first colour we're going to use is going to be Basecoat Burgundy. This is just going to be a quick all over coat over the entire cape, and this is going to act as our shadow colour for our red. With the Basecoat Burgundy all applied, our next colour is going to be Mephiston Red, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to be spraying this in more of a 45-degree angle, and essentially the Basecoat Burgundy here is going to then act as our shadow colour. So instead of using things like normal oil washes and things like that, you're not going to need to, because the Basecoat Burgundy is going to do that job for you. And here we go after the Mephiston Red. So you see, obviously we've got that very nice red there. Then if you look in the shadows, we've got that Basecoat Burgundy still in there as well, giving us those natural darker shadows. So next up, we're going to carry on enhancing that red, and we're going to use Evil Sunz Scarlet. And this is just going to be a bit more focused towards the more prominent areas where the light's going to catch, such as here, here, and here. So here we are after that Evil Sunz Scarlet stage. You can see it's a very nice vibrant red, and because of that red it really helps to enhance those shadows even further. So you can see that Basecoat Burgundy just down in there. So moving on, to carry on highlighting the red, we're going to go into some orange, and this is just going to be focused on some of the sharper areas, such as the very bottom down here and on this one as well. And so I've lowered my PSI down now so that I can be a bit more controlled. The colour I'll be using is Troll Slayer Orange. And here we go. So you can see now we've got those really nice bright highest points. So the only thing I really want to do next is I need to actually reinforce the shadows that little bit more, because with all this airbrushing there's been some form of overspray. So some of my shadows have been a little bit lost, such as in here. So I'm going to return to my Basecoat Burgundy, thin this down into a bit more of like a glaze. I'm going to airbrush glaze these shadows back in. So here we go. With the re-establishment of those shadows, you can see now that we've got this really nice dark rich shadow, followed by those nice bright red highlights. So the cape here is essentially done. I will be returning back to it for some edge highlights later on once it's been attached to Crowe himself. And the reason I'm doing that is simply so that I can see where the light's going to be falling on the miniature and then hit the edge highlights that way. So now that the cape is all done, we are going to start work on Crowe himself. So we're going to base coat the entire model with Vallejo Model Air Gun Metal. And then we're going to, from a 45-degree angle, highlight it with some Grey Knight Steel. So with those 2 silvers now complete, you see with the Grey Knight steel, we get this really nice blue steel. And then we still have some tonal variety, especially underneath in the shadows, with that regular silver that we did at the start. So with the silver now base coated in, we're going to need to give it a shade. So I'm going to use Norn oil, but I'm going to thin it down with some Lamium medium. And the reason I'm doing this is because I still want the Norn oil to obviously act like a shade, go into all the recesses. However, I don't want it to stain the actual surface. So by thinning it with Lamium medium, we therefore negate really the heavy tea staining. So once your mix is ready, it is just a simple case of just applying this all over the silver armor. If you get some on things obviously like this book here, the purity seal, stuff like that, it doesn't matter because we need to base coat those in later. So here we are after that Norn oil stage. So you can see we've got loads of nice deep shading in all of this armor now, and because of that Lamium medium we haven't stained the actual flat surfaces, and you can see as well I've done it on the backpack here as well. So the next step is just to block in all of the black details, so that's things like the casing on the bolter and your armor joints as well. And here we go, all those black details are just very quickly blocked in, and now since all that is done, we can actually now put the cape and the backpack on the actual model. So our next step is just to block in all of our gold details, so that is things like all of the writing that you see over the model, and for that we're going to use Retributor Armor. So when doing your writing, just make sure you don't have too much paint actually on your brush, and we're just looking to hit the raised surfaces of all of these letters. So here we go with those gold details all blocked in, and they are scattered throughout the miniature, so just use your box art to find them all. The only one I haven't done is on this shoulder pad here, because I'm going to do the actual white of the shoulder pad before doing the gold. But up next we need to shade all of the gold, and for that we are going to use some Agrax Earthshade. With your Agrax Earthshade, make sure you're not like absolutely flooding the area, and just keep the shade so that you actually have some form of control over it. And here we go, so with that Agrax Earthshade all dry, you can see it just gives a lot of depth and definition to all of that gold, especially in the writing, because it creates this nice dark background for the gold to really pop from. So next up, we need to block in all of the parchment details, so that's all the things like the purity seals and the Grey Knight books, and for that we're going to use some Xandri dust. So same with the gold, the purity seals and stuff like that, they are dotted all over the model. So just use your box art just to make sure that you're hitting everything that needs to be parchment. And here we go. So you can see there is quite a lot of parchment details on this model, but just make sure, like I say, that you look at your box art, you go around, make sure you hit all of them. And now we need to shade them, so we're going to return to Agrax yet again. And one thing you can do with your Agrax here as well is things like the bolter here. I want this metal to be darker than the Grey Knight steel shining blue armor, so I'm going to do 1 to potentially 2 coats of Agrax just on these more mechanical darker metal areas. Here we are after that Agrax Earthshade. So you see obviously all of the parchment has been darkened down, And then especially on the bolter, we've got all of that just nice and grimy now. And you know, we still got to highlight it, but you can see the difference now between that and the blue of the armor. So next up is going to be all of the wax parts for the purity seals. So I'm going to base coat them in Mephiston red and then just give them a quick shade of Druchii violet. With that wax all base coated in and shaded, we're going to highlight all of the purity seals now. So for the parchment, we're going to do an initial highlight with Ushabti bone, followed by a fine highlight of ivory. And then for the wax, we're just going to do a quick highlight of Evil Sunz Scarlet. So when it comes to doing the highlights on the purity seals, what we're looking to do is use this Ushabti bone on the highest areas, leaving that dark Xandri dust in the recesses. So you see here, I've done that bit, and then this bit here is a recess, so I'm going to avoid that bit and highlight this bit just here. With that Ushabti bone highlight complete, with our ivory, we are just now looking for the sharpest edges. And then finally, with some Evil Sunz Scarlet, we're just looking to give the wax a very quick edge highlight. And here we go. So that is our purity seals and other parchments such as their books all complete. All that's left is just to do that writing. So for that, we're going to return to that Vallejo black and we're going to thin this down so that it flows very, very easily off of our brush. And we're just simply going to do small squiggly lines over all of the parchment. With that writing all done, our purity seals and parchment are fully finished. Okay, so before we tackle things like the white, I want to just quickly do some more edge highlights. So we're going to do the edge highlights on the red cape so we can fully finish that off, and then some edge highlights on the black here to finish the bolter off as well. So for the black, our initial edge highlight is going to be with rust grey, and then we're going to do a fine dot edge highlight with Fenrisian grey. And then for the red, our first edge highlight is going to be with Wild Rider red, and then finer edge highlights with Troll Slayer orange. So with the rust grey, we are just simply looking for all of the edges and where the light would catch. So for instance, this area just here, I'm just going to run that rust grey very, very gently just along that highlight there. And then with your Fenrisian grey, we're looking for the sharpest details. So where these lines here meet, we're just going to do a small dot of Fenrisian grey there, and then same again just here where this line meets just there, just do a dot of it, and then you can also just do a small amount along here. With the Wild Rider red, this is going to be our main broad edge highlight, so we're just looking for all of the edges on the cape and we're just going to run this colour over them. With those initial highlights, you can see as well around the back here, I've followed the edge highlight running along here, and then I've also done along the edges along here, same within the middle. I've followed the edges here and along here. So with the Troll Slayer orange, we are again going to do a more refined edge highlight. So on areas such as here, we're just going to go roughly on this sort of bottom quarter, and then around the back it's a bit easier. Where you've got this line here, we're going to be going down to this sharp point here where that bit meets just there. And then on the edges here, we've got orange here and here, and here. So it's going to run a little bit just there, and just there. With those red edge highlights on the cape and the black edge highlights on the bolter all done, the bolter and the cape are fully finished. So moving on, next up we are going to block in all of the white details. So when it comes to white, instead of just going for just pure white straight off the bat, we need to actually build up a off-white sort of base coat so that we have some form of natural shadows. So our base coat is going to be pale grey blue, and then we're going to do a initial highlight with Hawthorn grey, and then we're going to finish off with the pure white highlights. With that initial coat of off-white blocked in, we need to give it some shading. So what we're going to do is return to that low and medium and Nuln Oil mix. With that shade all dry, you see we get lots of nice definition back in that helmet, and it gives us a good point for continuing our highlights. So next up with the Hawthorn grey, we're going to thin this down into more of a glaze, and we're going to start building those highlights up towards the top of the head where the light will be catching. So we're just aiming to build up these layers slowly so that we're not going to get a really stark jump between our initial base coat and this new Hawthorn grey. And we're going to look to paint it to about here, so roughly halfway going up, so that we're going to get a gradual transition from this to this. And here we go after that Hawthorn grey. So you see we've got this nice transition now from a darker off-white to this lighter off-white. So now when it comes to using the actual pure white, we're going to more or less use it as an edge highlight. So areas such as just here, and then running it along this ridge here. And that extra little bit of pure white will just help sell the actual effect of an overall white kind of appearance. And there we go. So with those white edge highlights, our face and our shoulder pad are complete. Obviously with the shoulder pad, you know, just off camera, I'm just going to be blocking in things like the inquisitorial symbol here. So it's just going to be a red background with a gold trim. So moving on, we're going to start work on the sword. So I will be airbrushing the sword here. So I have made a little mistake by doing this purity seal, because it's probably going to be inevitable that when I airbrush sort of down in this area, I will get some overspray on it. So I should have done that purity seal after doing the sword. So if you are following along with this and you've got your own Castellan Crowe, just do the sword first and then do these purity seals here. But to base coat it, we're going to use some Nagaroth Night. With the Nagaroth Night all applied, our next colour is going to be Xeru's Purple, and we are just going to be doing this as a highlight. So we're going to be looking at like the tops of these skulls here and along the edge of the blade here as well. With the Xeru's Purple highlights now complete, you can see we're already getting this nice transition from our dark purple to a more bright mid-tone purple. So next up, I want to start incorporating more of a flame effect. So I'm going to be using some whites, yellows, and some fluorescent oranges. So I'm going to be using a white ink for this, and with the airbrush, I'm just going to be focusing on things like the lower half of these faces here. And then we're going to paintbrush in the ink into all of these runes that you see along the actual blade itself. With that white established, we're going to use some Flash Kits yellow, and the white is going to really enhance the actual glow from this yellow. And now to tie it all together, we're going to use some orange fluorescent paint. And there we go. So with that orange fluorescent paint, our sword is complete. So you see we get this really nice fiery glow, and then we transition into that purple as well. Now, if you want to take this maybe a little bit further, you can come back in with things like your Nagaroth Knight just to really reinforce some of the transitions. Or you could also come in with something like a stipple kind of emotion to give more of a crackled kind of fiery look to the sword. And then lastly, you can also use that same fluorescent paint and just do a little bit of OSL on the leg and on the rocks once they're done as well. With the blade of the sword all finished, we've just got to block in some of the other little details. So this bit just here, this trim bit is going to be brass, and the gem is going to be a green gem, and then the handle is just going to be black. When it comes to doing the gemstone, we're going to use the technical paint here. This is one of the gemstone paints from GW. So we need to base coat the actual gem in a bright silver, and then we just need to go over that gem with that technical paint. So the way that these gemstone paints work is that they dry semi-transparent. So by having the bright silver underneath, you get the actual sort of shimmering gemstone kind of effect. So all you want to do is just load up a bit on the end of your brush, and then you're going to come in to the bottom corner of your gemstone, and you're simply just going to paint it on there and then pull it over your gemstone. So the only things left to do on our Castellan Crowe are the banner, which we're just going to do like box art. So it's going to be a red background, the gold trim, the white flames, and then this bit is going to remain being black. And then we just need to do the blue eyes as well. For the rest of the details, when it comes to the gold, that's Retributor armor. The sword is going to be Lead Belcher, and then the banner is just going to be based in Xandri Dust. So now that everything on that banner has been base coated, we're going to give the main banner, so the red and the silver, etc., a shade of Nuln Oil, and then the gold and the Xandri Dust just here are going to have Agrax Earthshade. Now that that shade is all dry, we need to highlight the red. So we're going to start off with some Evilson Scarlet, and then a finer edge highlight of Wild Rider Red. For the tabard bit here, it's exactly the same as what we were doing earlier. It's just some Ushabti bone, and then for the gold, we're just going to highlight that with some silver. With those final highlights all applied, our banner is complete. So the only thing left is the eyes. To base coat the eye, we're going to use Calidor Sky. After that is dry, we're going to take some Ionic Blue from the Army Painter, and this is going to be painted towards this end of the eye down here. With those eye lenses all done, our Castellan Crowe is finished. Now, obviously bar the base, and when it comes to basing, just make sure it matches the rest of your army.